All right, hello and welcome back to another episode of Just a Girl from Cleveland. This is episode 166. Recording a little bit late again this week. I had a work event last night, so I was not able to record. Although I feel like this season I've been kind of having to either do like Tuesdays or Wednesdays based on my schedule. So probably not that crazy for whoever is listening and just waiting for my episode to come out. But yes, it was good because it did give me some time to watch the Hard Knocks episode as well, which had a lot more Browns focus than the first episode. So we love to see that. And, you know, lots to talk about from that, lots to talk about from the Browns-Steelers game. So I think we could probably just get right into it. Obviously, another tough loss, 27-14 on the road. It almost felt too good to be true that they could sweep the Steelers in a season where obviously they have been playing very poorly overall. To get one win against them, also when the Steelers are having a great season, they're leading the division right now. I believe they're 9-3. So it would have been way too good to be true for us to be able to sweep them, because I don't think that's happened in my entire life. The Browns have not won a regular season game on the road in Pittsburgh since 2003, which is insane. That has not happened in that long. Obviously, they won the road game for the playoffs in Pittsburgh during the COVID year, but not a regular season game in a very, very long time. So that's just like one of those classic insane Brown stats where you're like, this can't be true. We play them every single season on the road. How could we not have won a single time since 2003? But just one of those Cleveland curses, I guess. There was a lot of just weird chatter, I guess, leading up to the game. There was the whole George Pickens storyline, which is hilarious because he didn't even, he had a hamstring injury, announced the day of that he wasn't going to be playing. So it was funny to have that happen. It seems like there's always a Pittsburgh Steelers receiver just being so weird about the Browns. They as a team, I feel like always kind of like dismiss the Browns. Like the fan base is always like, the Browns aren't even a rivalry. Like we're just better than them. They don't even like to give us any credit. Yet the receivers are always having so many things to say about the Browns. Juju Smith-Schuster, his comments years ago. Chase Claypool had lots of weird things to say. Now George Pickens, there's always just one of them saying weird things. And that was happening again where George Pickens was saying, I didn't even know who Greg Newsome was. I don't know who that is, which was hilarious because Greg ended up posting a screenshot of, I think, DMs with George Pickens from many, many years ago. So and we knew George Pickens already knew who Greg was. No one was believing him in that moment. But it's just a weird, crazy comment to make. So that was kind of a strange thing leading up to it. I feel like there's always, regardless of what the records of the two teams are, there's always going to be a lot of fight and energy in those matchups. And even though obviously 27-14 is not a close game, it did feel like the team had a lot of fight in them and they didn't lay down and just give up. There's been games where I felt like they kind of laid down and gave up. This didn't feel like one of those. So I think the fact that it is the Steelers and it is a division game, regardless of how the season's going, I think the players care about those games and care about putting their best foot forward and putting in good effort. But in that game in particular, I think there were some really big, costly mistakes. Obviously, interceptions are always going to kill you, but I think that just never allowed them to be fully in it, even when they would fight back and it felt like, okay, maybe they can get this within range. A big mistake, a back-breaking Jameis interception, those kind of things can really set you back, which you expect on some level with Jameis. I guess for a bright spot, I sound probably like a broken record with this week after week now, but Jerry Jeudy had not his best performance because I don't think anyone had a spectacular performance. Obviously, you put 14 points on the board. There's not going to be anything too crazy, but still 5 receptions for 64 yards and a touchdown. And it just felt like there was some good chemistry with Jameis. And I think that's the pattern we've seen forming week after week between the two of them is that they are really Jameis is really relying on Jerry Jeudy as someone he can trust and count on when, a broken play happens, or, he just has to make a split second decision. Like, that is who he's looking to. When he's scrambling around, that's who he is finding in a lot of situations. And I think that's really exciting to see. And it's been good to see the best of Jerry Jeudy in those situations when they've been able to have a couple games together now and be able to form that chemistry. So I think that was probably like my brightest spot of the game. My lowest spot of the game is, other than interceptions and those type of plays, the Dustin Hopkins struggles are just a bow on top of this season to just describe how everything has gone. Obviously, this past offseason, they gave him a 3-year, $15.9 million extension, which is a decent extension for a kicker to get, especially one that you haven't seen within your program year after year, consistently kicking at a certain level. Like, this was a guy that just joined the team last year and, was replacing a kicker that they had drafted and failed on. So it was, it was a risky bet to give a guy like that an extension in the way they did. He missed another 2 kicks against the Steelers to bring his field goal percentage to 64% on the season. Then his extra point percentage, 88.9% on the season. This literally makes him the worst in the league, especially for kickers who have kicked, over at this point, like 8 to 10 games. Like, he is the worst in the league. And honestly, like, my perspective on this is that, like, I think it's a huge blemish on just the mindset of the front office. Like, obviously it's not a ton of money. Kicker money isn't the end of the world. They have bigger problems like the Deshaun Watson contract. But I think when you factor in like the position this team is in with the Deshaun Watson contract, how they're going to have to move forward and really just nail every decision they're making, because the cap is going to be taken up by trying to get through the rest of this Deshaun contract, that they don't have room for error to make these mistakes. And it's just another little thing that's going to make it harder for them in the future to manage the cap for the next couple of years. And I think it's a bad look more than anything else when you just compound all of those issues together. Like I said, I think that, it seemed like a good decision in the moment because he had such a spectacular year kicking last year. But in hindsight, it's like maybe you should have seen if he could do this year after year within your organization, because kicking can be so up and down. And once a guy loses it, especially within one particular team, it's so hard to get it back, because I think it becomes super mental at that point. He can go to another team and maybe re-find his footing and be a great kicker again, because he was able to get out of that mental situation in that organization. But it's really hard within that same organization to fix those things. So, I think it would have probably been good for them to maybe wait on that. And I know they like to try to get ahead on these contracts. They've always done that. They did that with the Myles contract to get it ahead of some of the other pass rushers that were going to get paid so that, they could get a significantly better deal. And it's worked a lot of times. They just did it with Jerry Jeudy, where they extended him before he even took a snap with the Browns. And that one looks like it's paying dividends right now and is really, going to pay off. But the risk when you do that consistently is that sometimes it's not going to work out. And I guess that is the mindset of the front office. Like, that's a bet they're willing to take. And they've done it time and time again. And they say, yeah, we know we're going to fail sometimes, but we're going to hit it other times. I think it just feels so bad right now when you put it alongside this horrible quarterback contract that's just going to weigh so heavily on you. I think it makes it feel so much worse. So that was my big downside of the game. Just, man, it like you expect it almost at this point when he gets up there to kick. You're just like, he's going to miss again. I mean, he's missing at this point nearly half of his field goals. I mean, he's missing a third of them at this point, but it's getting lower every single time. We're at 64% made now. So it's a struggle to watch, and just, I don't know, like I said, it's a bow on the season where you feel like nothing has been going our way, and that's just another example of it. Okay, so let's get into Hard Knocks now. That's pretty much all I had to say about that game, but we'll get into some more of it within Hard Knocks because obviously they talked a lot about the Browns-Steelers game. Okay, so the episode pretty much opened up with the loss to the Broncos. Obviously, that wasn't really on much of the first episode since it was a Monday night game. And I think my interesting takeaway from just those few moments were we had some more mic'd up moments with Stefanski's reactions. And although I feel like he always looks very stoic on the sidelines, like even in bad moments, if he like holds his head or like does something, you can't really tell if he's like saying anything, but he is always kind of like mumbling things under his breath. It's just not like super animated like other coaches might be. So I thought that was interesting. They showed the post-game Jameis quote of asking the Lord to deliver me from pick sixes, which is everyone's new favorite Jameis quote. So that was kind of really, they just really quickly wrapped up that game. There wasn't, I don't think, like too much other than showing a couple plays from the game. But obviously then they get into Browns-Steelers game. Talked a lot. They showed a lot of clips of just the history of the rivalry, had a lot of the players kind of talking about like how meaningful this game is to both teams and how hard fought it is every single time, which going back to how a lot of Steelers fans always say that like they don't care that much about the rivalry, like the players do. It still matters to the players. It's still Browns Steelers to them, and they still both want to kill each other. So definitely is important to those guys. There was one really interesting comment from Kevin when they were watching film in the practice facility. And he was talking about how a bunch of guys hit their top speeds of the season, because they're able to track how fast guys are going after that Jameis interception that came towards the end of the game, when the Browns were kind of driving down the field. And it felt like that really sealed the game for the Broncos' victory. But he was basically saying in that moment with those guys hitting their top speeds, like that was the 91st play of the game. And that shows just how much they still cared and how much they still wanted to win that game. And I felt like that was an important point, I think, to make for everyone to see the buy-in from the players in this team that, when you're a 3-win team, like I don't think you're usually going to see moments like that. But the fact that he pointed that out of like how much those guys still care, I think is a good sign for me of just hopefully the future on, are they buying into Kevin? Are they buying into this organization as a whole? Like, do they feel like there's still something to salvage here in the future? Maybe not for this season, but maybe in the future. So I thought that was just an interesting comment that they made. Then they got into some Bengals stuff on the episode. The Bengals are really interesting. I think they're in a weird place with Joe and Jamar continuing to be so fantastic season after season. They're still, even when they have ups and downs, like they're still two of the top players at both of their positions. Very talented guys. I just don't know how this team moves forward. Obviously, there's conversations about like, what are they going to do with T. Higgins? Should they pay him or not? I think it wouldn't be smart for them to pay T. Higgins, knowing how little money they have to spend and how much more help other areas of that team need. Like, they can probably keep trying to go at it with Joe and Jamar and fill in some other pieces for pass catchers and other offensive weapons. They have other areas of this team they need to fix, like the defense, offensive line. Like there's bigger issues that I think it wouldn't be smart for them to pay T, because that's going to take away from what they can do in other positions. Now, maybe as Browns fan, I think that they should just do that because it would probably hinder them from being able to have a complete team in the future. But from just a pure football perspective, I don't think it makes sense for them to do that. So we'll be interested to see how that kind of goes moving forward. Some other interesting moments, they showed a couple cute moments with Jameis and his family, I don't know if it's wife or girlfriend and children. They did a lot of focusing on Jameis's career progression too. They kind of started talking about like him back in when he was, the top pick in the draft, and then 5 years in Tampa Bay with the highs and lows, having, so many touchdowns, but also so many interceptions, with which we have come to learn as, the Jameis experience that he has continued to have throughout his career. Then kind of playing that back up in 4 years in New Orleans, just trying to prove himself, dealing with injuries, being behind, Drew Brees for a while, and just continuing to try to get any opportunity to just show that he could still be a guy. And then coming to Cleveland, where just because of Deshaun's injury, he was able to have a real opportunity to start again for the first time in, I think, 2 years. He hadn't started a game. So it's kind of crazy actually to think about how long he's been in the league now. Like, he's been in the league for a decade. Like, this man he has seen things in this league. He has been through adversity, ups and downs. And I think because he's like, his personality is so interesting and he's just Jameis in every way. I think sometimes you forget like what a veteran presence he is on this team and in this league, and what he has to offer from that perspective. In my mind, he just seems so young, I think because of the way he acts and like kind of carries himself a lot of the time, but he really does kind of bring a lot of that to the table as well, which probably has been very helpful. With having to make a mid-season transition to a different quarterback. Like, that's not an easy thing to do by any means for any member of the team. It's the biggest change that you can make. So I think, that's probably been really useful. Some other notes, the respect that Mike Tomlin gave to Myles Garrett brought me so much joy, actually. And I hope all Steelers fans watch that and were like, because it was funny, they kind of did the back-to-back of, the Steelers guys talking about Myles and then the Browns guys talking about TJ. And I just feel like even the respect that all of the Steelers players, the respect that Mike Tomlin gave to what they have to do week in and week out, every time that they are preparing to play against Myles Garrett, was so much more notable than what the Browns were saying about TJ Watt. Like, they did make a few comments about like, oh, he doesn't like to get chipped or, whatever. There were a couple things said, but it was a different level of like the Steelers were sitting down and being like, how are we not going to let Myles Garrett do what he did to us a couple weeks ago? That can't happen again. It was such a priority for them in their conversation. So that brought me, it just brought me a lot of joy to see that, because Myles deserves that level of respect. We know that every single team is preparing for Myles Garrett in the same exact way. They're sitting there going, how are we going to make sure we don't let Myles take over this game? So it was nice to see it on camera, because you hear players, you hear coaches talk about it all the time, and people still want to deny Myles and his greatness and how much of an effect he can have on a game, even when the stats, the box score's not showing it. But it's very clear when you look at those locker rooms and those training sessions, who is more important to prepare for. They also showed some moments with in the practice facility with the Browns defense, where Shelby Harris actually had some interesting comments about how basically, even though the season is like over for this team, that this is an evaluation period for the Browns and all of the players on that team, he kept saying, like, they want to see if you are a part of the problem or a part of the solution. That was kind of what he kept repeating. And I thought it was interesting that he was so open about that. He was like, I'm going to be really candid right now. Like, I know that everything is over, but this is like for your individual careers moving forward. Like, you should care about how you're showing up week in and week out, because it's going to matter for everyone watching and saying, do we want to bring him back next year? Or is he someone that we want to pay moving forward to be a part of the solution of this team growing and being fixed in the future? And I think he was kind of subtly saying to like other teams watching and being like, do we want to sign this guy, you know? And I thought it was interesting for him to be so candid in that moment about that, but that is what is going on, you know, when a team is struggling. Like they do want to see and evaluate some of that talent on who they're going to want to bring back. I feel like that's what I've been talking about on here the last few weeks on, you know, players that I want to get, you know, more of a look at going into next year and, you know, see if they'll be part of the future of this team. So I thought that was interesting for him to bring that up. Another thing that for some reason always throws me out is when Kevin swears. I don't know why it throws me off. Like, he's a grown man. There's no reason that shouldn't throw me off in any way. But it feels like because he is so like polished and put together most of the time, it's just funny when you hear him with a little more fire, like dropping F-bombs in the practice room. Like it just throws me off. I don't know if anyone else has that experience, but I'm just like, oh my God, Kevin, no. Like how that's crazy for you to do that. Because it seems unlike what we, I guess, know about Kevin. And obviously we've seen it in a lot of clips in his like post-game speeches after a win when they post those on social media. Like I know he does, but every time I'm like clutching my pearls for some reason. I don't know what that's about, but just thought that was a funny note. There was one other funny moment I just wanted to comment on from Jameis. He said to a child in Steelers gear on the sideline, he was signing her like little mini football or whatever. He was like, I respect your courage and your strength to give me this ball to sign it while wearing those colors. I know your heart is pure. And I legitimately was laughing out loud on my couch. Like I know Jameis isn't trying to be funny, but he just says the most random funny things. And that one in particular made me laugh. So I wanted to call that one out. But yeah, that was pretty much everything from Hard Knocks. It's nice to have this kind of inside look. I don't feel horrible about what we've seen from the Browns so far, just from an internal organization perspective. So I guess we'll see moving forward if we get any other interesting tidbits. Obviously this week we've got a big matchup against the Chiefs. I am, as you know, a massive Swiftie, so hoping and praying that Taylor is making the Travis homecoming trip to Cleveland, especially now that her tour is over. So it'll be really exciting to see if she makes a trek for an away game. She doesn't really go to many away games. So I don't know. I feel like Cleveland could be different, but we'll see. You know, it would be fun for the Browns to get a win against the reigning Super Bowl champs. Like, another good opportunity to build and have some morale within the team and the organization. So, you know, always hoping to win, but not getting my hopes up. The Chiefs continue to find ways week after week. Obviously, the kick at the end of the game last week that doinked in, which rarely happens. It feels like most teams that doinks out, but for the Chiefs, it goes right in. So not getting my hopes up, but hopefully it'll be at least an interesting game, maybe another big Jerry Jeudy game. Who knows? We'll see what happens, but that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for listening. If you could subscribe on the YouTube, leave a comment on the YouTube, subscribe or follow wherever you listen to podcasts, leave a review or rating, all that good stuff. Share with a friend. I'd very much appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for listening. Hopefully next episode we'll get into some more calf stuff too. I know I didn't touch on that today, but we'll try to get into it more there. But as always, appreciate you all and go Browns.